As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains, haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road, let's camera action, I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Always good to kind of make the connection and to get up on a Monday morning, or get up on any morning for that matter. I was talking to Marcy Lynn Jones just before we went on air about every day is a new birthday. You know, it's a day of kind of resurrection and belief, and to kind of exercise why you think you're here on the planet, whether you have an answer to that question or not. Again, we're really blessed today to have Chauncey K. Robinson with us. Chauncey is a social media manager for the People's World, I would say newspaper, multimedia platform, broadcast medium. It's really something that we really urge people to kind of check out. Marcy Lynn Jones is here, and Art Perlow is here. Hello, Art. How you doing?
Okay, Tom.
Art's a little more of the reticent guy, but I'm going to bring him out here because we know about you and Joelle have a relationship, rumor has it?
Well, yes, we've been married for 45 years.
Indeed. So Joelle Fishman is not here, but Art Perlow is here. And I love the fact that you guys have your own individual unique identities. And that's what makes really a couple, I think, strong, where everybody kind of believes and knows what their, not necessarily what their role is, but they can have independent role and not be dependent upon one another, but independently supportive. We're going to talk about a lot today. Chauncey K. Robinson is kind of our key focus, and Marcy's going to Lynn Jones is going to kind of help out. Marcy, by the way, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
This is I know you just celebrated your Sweet 16 times. Well, what we just say Sweet 16 plus.
Some years.
Sweet 16, 47. She's and proud of it, And Chauncey, you've been here in New Haven since Wednesday. You arrived on Wednesday from LA, or
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning, okay. And Art, what gave us the opportunity to kind of bring Chauncey into our midst physically? I mean, we can read about her as social media manager on the People's World, and we can see her articles, which are really so strongly and accurately and professionally kind of written, as well as we're going to talk about some of her YouTube and her creative impulses. But specifically, she arrived on last week. Why again, Art?
Well, we were very lucky that Chauncey was able to come for our 45th annual People's World African American History Month celebration in Hartford Friday and New Haven yesterday. She gave a brilliant presentation on our theme. The national theme for Black History Month this year was the Great Migration, and what we linked it, and Chauncey did a beautiful job giving the history of the Great Migration leading to the Harlem Renaissance, and linking it with the migration of people from Latin America, the Caribbean, and all over the world today for similar reasons and facing similar issues. And we were very lucky that Chauncey was able to arrange to come in on Thursday and attend that wonderful hearing at City Hall on the jobs crisis and Yale University.
Tremendous. Art, that's good. We'd have to have you back. You're a good guy. You did it just the way that we rehearsed it.
A great hype person.
I love that.
Anytime, Tom.
I love that. You'll have your union call my union, and we'll kind of work out a contract.
Okay.
Chauncey, tease us a little bit about what you shared with folks in Hartford and yesterday. Art gave kind of a good explanation, but this issue of our sojourn here in the Americas, not to mention that 1619 people are kind of celebrating that kind of historical landmark. But share with us a few tidbits for those of us that weren't able to, including myself, to get to the event yesterday as well as in Hartford.
Yeah, it was one of the things like Art was talking about the Great Migration being what over 6 million African Americans traveling from the South to the Midwest, the North, the West, and kind of putting that into perspective of one of the things I like to think of is that narrative is important. Stories are important, and when we can remember our stories, we can remember where we've been, our triumphs of our past, the horrors of our past, to connect it to the things that we go through now. And, one of the things that I was trying of connecting it was the idea that we have, we're in turbulent political times, right? There's a White House administration, president who, targets the idea of the other, with this question of a wall, with the fake emergencies, and putting a lot of the onus of, this system that we have of poverty, the widening wealth gap and things on this question of like, oh, it's undocumented workers and things of that who are immigrating, taking their own great migration to escape, terrors and things and find a better life in the United States, which was very much what African Americans were doing right here in the United States, because it wasn't just some idea. The Great Migration wasn't just, oh, we'll just up and leave because it's after the Civil War. It came about. It's always great to put things in historical perspective because nothing's ahistorical and nothing is apolitical. And, the situation with African Americans migrating had to deal with not only finding, job security and things of that nature, but also dealing with fleeing the terror of the KKK,
Domestic
lynch
terrorism,
mobs,
yes.
all sorts of things for safety, because of, it was the defeat of radical Reconstruction. They were trying to, it was this constant disenfranchisement of African Americans and, finding that there was that to find a better life, they needed to go. And that's very similar to the same things of what we're dealing with now of the Great Migration that we're seeing of many workers, undocumented workers and working people and children and stuff coming from other countries. And so I think it's one of the things I wanted to connect was the importance of understanding that struggle and seeing that as a symbol for the ways we've come and knowing that peoples of oppressed nationalities, of marginalized groups have very similar fights, if not the same fight, to combat a system that very much wishes to divide and oppress us.
Indeed. You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Chauncey K. Robinson is with us, social media manager for the People's World. And definitely go to peoplesworld.org. Just daily, several times a day, several times an hour. You might have heard about USA Today, or you might have heard of something called the New York Times. You might have heard of something called Fortune Magazine. But check out peoplesworld.org. I think you might enjoy that. Marcy, did people respond? Did they throw tomatoes at Chauncey? Were they appreciative?
Absolutely
did they listen?
Not, absolutely not. I'm just so proud to be sitting next to her and just be able to just
go closer.
Really get an opportunity to meet someone so young and talented and beautiful, and really showing my kids, the young Communist League and our New Elm City Dream and Ice to Beef, that there is someone out there that is part of the party and is willing to give you the information that you need and listen to what you have to say.
Yes.
Everything that she touched base on yesterday was it was overwhelming to hear that all of those things were linked, and I wish a lot of the kids could have stayed a little bit later, but I just really, I need a copy of this speech.
Yes, definitely.
A whole copy.
Definitely, please.
Whole copy, because I really wish the kids were there to see that part. But I'm definitely going to make sure that they get the information that she shared with us yesterday. The kids need it.
Yes, and Chauncey, seriously, if you could share a copy with us, because you're a wise person, and you've already written. Have you published any books yet?
No.
But all of your articles are. There are books that are just people's articles, and you've written enough articles already in your speeches. So you're a walking testimony, and we really need that archival thing. So don't be too shy. You're hearing it from Marcy. You're hearing it from me. Really important. Art and I are kind of over that. We're AARP eligible kind of thing. So we read in Braille if we can. Chauncey, the Yale. Are you comfortable in chatting a little bit about your Yale experience? I shouldn't say Yale experience. You had a chance to see the intersectionality between our city politics and the institution here that was started in 1701. But for you to kind of see, was this your first time ever going to an event at City Hall here in New Haven?
Yeah, well, this is my first time in Connecticut.
First time in Connecticut, but born in Newark. I've been to a number of events. Hundreds of events at City Hall and in our Hall of Records and our aldermanic chambers. This event was sobering, sad, inspirational, real. So many words come in terms of your perspective of how and why this event happened on 2019, where there still seems to be a dispute, a disconnect, a lack of understanding between corporate responsibility, institutional responsibility, university responsibility, and the fact that citizens have rights and that the government has rights. So Could you comment a little bit on your article that you wrote?
Yeah, it was, once again, it was just such a great experience to go to the town hall meeting. It was the first event I went to when I touched down. And, you know, one of the things in the article that I wrote about the event was about the struggle for the fact that Yale is the largest employer in the city of New Haven. And, you know, of course, when I write articles, I'm always, you know, reading up on stuff. And it's one of the great things about writing articles is that I get to learn about new topics if they're new to me. And just kind of, you know, doing some digging and, you know, also talking to people and listening to the town hall, seeing that one of the reasons why they even, you know, Yale had agreed to do the idea of hiring local residents was because of the pressure of the community here, you know, of, you know, New Haven Rising, Unite Here locals and things, and people coming together saying you can't, you know, be the largest employer and yet there's neighborhoods in need and people who are unemployed. You know, there's a job crisis going on. How is that possible when Yale makes millions of dollars a day? Which of course just goes to the contradiction of our system, you know, that there are people who have so much wealth and then there's people who work for a living who help produce that wealth who are living, you know, paycheck to paycheck or no paycheck at all. And so it was, you know, really inspiring to see, you know, they started out with the Yale representative giving their report, and, you know, it's flowery, you know, numbers and saying, you know, there's much work to be done, but we've already, you know, they gave numbers that made it seem like they had already achieved what they said. But it was so great because one of the things was as soon as community members and union representatives and community organizers got up, it was like, no. And even the elders, you know, challenging those numbers, really getting technical with it, and also just kind of showing like there's sometimes this idea that if you throw numbers and you say this and that there won't be a challenge, kind of playing on what you think is that working people aren't intelligent enough to decipher certain things. But, you know, one of the great things I find out just coming from a working class family of Newark, New Jersey, is that we're straight shooters. You know, it's like we can smell BS, you know, and it's like as soon as that report was finished, people got up and said that's not the case at all. You know, they tried to include certain types of jobs that weren't necessarily the permanent jobs that they had agreed on and things of that nature. And people called them out on it, you know. So it was really, that was the inspiring part of the course. The frustrating part is that the question of if Yale is really listening and what they're going to do about it going forward. But it's also, you know, just great that the community is keeping the pressure on this university, on this institution.
Yes. Art, maybe share a little bit, because people, for us to get to this stage of having this, in my mind, unclear meeting and no seeking understanding meeting, even just to get to that stage of the meeting, we've had to have protests and marches and petitions. And Art, kind of share about that, about the need for civic activity, however you want to define it, is just so key. And we didn't reach our goal last week, but we still have our goals in mind.
Well, I think we could start off with Frederick Douglass, that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. I was part of the original Local 34 organizing drive when clerical and technical workers at Yale did not have a union and did not have particularly good pay and benefits. It was an overwhelmingly female unit, and the attitude of the administration was, you're just faculty wives, you work for pin money. But things had changed, and these were real workers.
Date us. This was in the late 70s, mid 80s.
Right. The union won its contract in a strike in 1984, but the organizing drive started years earlier.
Yes.
It took a long time, and people learned by being involved in the struggle.
Yes.
First with little things and then big things that they could win, so that now, thanks to the union, and before that, the strength and solidarity of Local 35 at Yale, that's why a job at Yale is one of the best jobs you can have in New Haven. And in a sense, it's why it's so hard to get a job at Yale, because people from all over Connecticut apply for these jobs.
And those numbers reflected that a lot in terms of where the breadth and extent of their hiring from outside of New Haven. Marcy, any comments in that regard?
I really think that keeping the pressure on them right now is what we need to do. With the numbers that mentioning the alders that they were presenting, it seemed like they genuinely did think that they met their mark.
Yes.
But we have wonderful alders that
Yes.
pay attention, and we have wonderful people that have been fighting this fight for a long time. I know I've been involved with it pretty much from the beginning, maybe the last 13 years or so, with New Haven Rising. So what's important to remember now is that we have to move forward and make sure that we hold them accountable for every person that is hired. There was something that was mentioned to me mainly that troubled me, was that no one ever really answered the question of, is everyone still working there?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So now they have the numbers there, but is everyone still working there? And they literally have no way to track that. So we need to get on that as well. So that's where I'm at with it. Stay on top of them.
Yeah, one of the things I actually noticed when I was writing notes during the thing, I kept saying retention.
Indeed.
You know, like how you have all these numbers, but like Marcy said, are you keeping these people? Are these people being encouraged? Because, you know, one thing, you know, getting put in positions can be very, especially positions where there's so much microaggressions and macroaggressions, especially against people of color on jobs and things like that. And, you know, there can be pressure to stay, or, you know, to feel like it's not something you can keep up with. So is there a support system there
That's right.
for people?
Yes.
And, you know, one of the things about the demographics that they gave racially was that they're still hiring 42% white people.
That's right.
Even
That's right.
though supposedly it's in neighborhoods of predominantly, you know, they've been hiring neighborhoods that are predominantly people of color. So those demographics don't really add up racially.
Indeed, indeed. Again, you're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and we're going to move to another topic, Chauncey. And again, people do call in from time to time, so you are publicly committed to calling in maybe in a few months again, so we can chat with you, and we'll have Joel here as well. But just so enjoy talking to you. Social media editor, that title is a new title. That's so. In terms of our young people that are coming up in the world, I think it's good for them to know that they may have a job where the title does not even exist today. But for you to have social media editor of the People's World, what's involved there? And I really encourage people to go to peoplesworld.org and to kind of see your articles and to see your curation. But what does a social media editor do?
Well, you know, I think it's an evolving
Oh, yeah,
term.
evolving. Okay.
Because of the
and
fact,
you want to raise.
Yes.
All right.
Actually, People's World just recently, some time ago, got unionized, which was really an awesome, you know, accomplishment and achievement. So we're part of the News Guild, the Chicago News Guild.
Tremendous.
And, you know, one of the things about the social media editor is it's, you know, there's a new digital arena that we have, you know, and that's had its own hit in the last 2 or 3 years where, you know, we saw with BuzzFeed and other new digital kind of media that, you know, they deal with the same thing that older media deals with, the whole question of journalism, of people valuing the idea of news and things of that nature. And what the social media editor, what I take on is, you know, doing a lot of research on algorithms. I mean, and by that, I mean how people interact on these social media platforms.
Good.
You know, looking at, it's the same thing as virtual versus non-virtual, how people behave.
Yes.
And then base the spreading of the People's World based off of that behavior, such as when we post, what we post, the kind of, and that also takes into, because although the title is social media editor, I'm very much involved with the editor.
You're writing also.
We have these meetings, looking at what articles are doing well. We find with People's World, people really like our analysis. You know, one of the things we say is that we're news with class.
Indeed.
As in with the working class.
Go ahead.
And people really do respond to, because you can get news from, like you were mentioning, other publications where they can be generic, they can be clickbait, or they could just tell you what's been happening. And I think what we're finding now, and this is a reflection of the elections and things of that, people want to know about the issues.
That's right.
And they want to know how the issues relate to them. And one of the things that People's World does is that we relate it to you. Like, why do you need to know about this protest? Why do you need to know about this current thing that happened? Why do you need to check out this movie? What's the themes of it? Things of that nature. And what I do is seeing how people respond to that. and then encouraging us to do more of that content.
Tremendous. And, you hear this term solutions journalism all the time, but even that's kind of a generic term. But what you just said is even more profound. You recently interviewed Angela Davis.
Yeah.
So, come on. Have you interviewed Angela Davis recently? Have you? Share with us. Let us touch you.
That was so awesome, actually. Jarvis Tyner actually put me in contact with Angela Davis because she was actually at the event in New York, I think about a year ago. She spoke at the event. And Jarvis, I reached out to Jarvis. And because she was going to be in Chicago for 2 events that were going on, for the Teachers Union and also for an event talking about the prison industrial complex and whatnot. And so it was funny because Jarvis gave me a number that I thought was just her office number, and I was going to talk to her assistant or something. And so I call the number and I hear a voice answer, and it's her. And she's like, hello. And I'm like, oh my, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this is Angela Davis. She just answered the phone. And so I was like, hi, I'm Chauncey Robinson. I'm sure Jarvis said, she's like, oh, hi, Chauncey. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Angela Davis. And I explained what I was doing. And of course she has so much stuff going on. So she was like, well, I'll put you in contact with, my assistant and we'll figure something out. And of course, it worked out. And I was able to kind of be around her for the weekend that she was doing it. And she signed my book and things of that nature. And she's an icon, right? And that I actually did a follow-up article sort of with what she was dealing with the Birmingham Institute and the red baiting that pretty much happened with her in terms of that award and that honoring that she was supposed to get. And, it was just, she's always so great at connecting issues. Yes. Connecting international solidarity.
What does she say to you as a young woman, as an aspiring woman, an accomplished woman already? What is she saying to your generation in terms of us having hope and tactics and strategies?
I think it's about, one of the things she has said, and she actually, and this was cool to me as someone who's so into culture and the social analysis of culture, is the power of the imagination, the power of education as well. And what education has turned into or is under our current system, which is very much not about encouraging young people to use their minds in a creative way. And it can be so demoralizing and pressuring. And one of the things I got just personally out of, listening to her speech was the idea of the power of not feeling compelled to work within the confines and the box that the system a system gives you to tell you this is how you should think, this is the path you should go on, but more so going against the grain. I mean, she of course has exemplified that in her life, going against the grain, but then she speaks to that so wonderfully about that, and then connecting it to other struggles, the intersectionality. And one of the great things I thought was that she always emphasizes the power of women and the power and the leadership of women. And it's how important it is. And I mean, just for me, just seeing like in the last few years, we saw an unprecedented amount of Black women running for offices and winning offices, because for so much, even the 2016 elections, Black women very much, we turn out for voting, and we're at a point where it's like, we don't just want a seat at the table. We want to be at the head of the table. And we are so deserving of that, to lead, not just only support someone who wants to lead us.
Again, you're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show, and Chauncey K. What's K stand for, if I might ask?
Catherine.
Okay, Catherine. Chauncey Catherine Robinson.
It's my aunt. It's my aunt's
all right.
name.
Homage to your aunt.
Thank you.
And Marcy Lynn Jones and Art Perlow are here with us. And Chauncey's a social media editor and more, and much more for the People's World. Speaking about Chauncey, speaking about imagination and culture and just education, you do reviews also. You did a review on Dead something. Dead birds?
Birds of Passage.
Birds of Passage?
Yeah. Well, for the People's World, I, along with Eric A. Gordon, I head up the cultural section. Okay. Which we think it's super.
Finally we find that out. Okay.
Yeah. It's super important. I think culture because when working people aren't necessarily paying attention to like the elections and stuff like that, we're taking in media, we're taking in TV, we're taking in movies and things of that nature, and all of that has messaging. Not even the ones that are apolitical are usually just pushing status quo, which is political in and of itself. So it's very important, I think, to get an analysis from a perspective that forward-thinking people, and that's why I just love doing film and TV reviews, which I do for People's World. I also do for my YouTube channel, which is a little bit more focused on the horror and supernatural genre. But yeah, I did Birds of Passage, which was a really interesting movie that dealt with, it could be seen as sort of in the vein of The Godfather and Scarface, but in this particular case, it was a Colombian movie, and it dealt with an indigenous family, the Wayuu family, and their tribe, and how this Colombia drug trade, which is historical, really was an erosion and an upheaval to the native people there. And what they dealt with, and not because you can talk about Pablo Escobar and all those others of the drug cartel. They get a lot of attention, but there were other aspects of that and other people influenced. And the way I did the review was to try to give also a backdrop to the Colombian conflict over there, and also the U.S.'s role in that. Because the U.S. definitely had a role in the Colombian conflict, and connecting that along with giving a movie review, which is what I try to do when I do reviews.
And the connection in your mind, this is kind of a broad, maybe super philosophical question. The connection between culture and education, and even mental health, and even just digesting this media atmosphere that we all swim in. What is that connection for you?
It's one of the, it's a very distinct connection. One of the things when you talk about mental health, as a young Black woman, in the last couple of years, we've gotten really great increased representation when it comes to film and TV and things of that nature. But, there's a long ways to go in that regard, and seeing ourselves represented on TV. And it's actually, there's been studies that show when people see themselves in certain roles on television and stuff, then they believe that they can do it. I think it's called the CSI effect, where a lot of, young women saw a lot, because, there's these TV shows about CSI forensics and stuff. And because of that influx, they saw that a lot of young girls saw that they could get into stem cell research, that they can get into forensics research because they saw themselves on TV. So then you can connect that to the racial aspect of it, where, there were times, and it still sometimes is prevalent, of, people of color seeing themselves as thugs, seeing themselves on TV as criminals and things of that nature. And we've had an influx of a change in that, and how that affects people's mentality, to be able to see yourself as a layered individual, as a complex individual, as a person who can have issues and not just be like, for the Black woman, the strong Black woman who feels no pain and vulnerability. And this very much connects to the mental, because it says, I can have all these nuances, because especially if you're an activist or something, there needs to be self-care. There needs to be an idea of saying you can take a break. You can have that day, because how good can you be if you're exhausted?
Indeed. And Marcy, we were talking about the self-care before, and just as you were talking, Chauncey, the image of the little girl looking at the Michelle Obama picture kind of came to my mind. You want to jump in about your daughter and just self-care and culture?
Healthcare is very important when it comes to our young ladies. A lot of them are not being taught right because their parents weren't taught right. So what happens often is we are now sharing knowledge we wouldn't share before. It was kind of like Pastor Betty Marks kind of said that back then you didn't ask those questions, but now the kids can ask those questions. They could research those questions. They could YouTube those questions. But I want to be that parent that they can come to, and I will answer the question.
Good.
It makes us a one-on-one thing. So I think knowledge is it. So we as women are sharing more, and that is where we're getting a lot more done now, because we're able to share knowledge and we're not holding things in. That because we carry everything in our bellies. We need to let that go. Let that go.
And you've referenced, if we share a little bit about your daughter?
Yeah.
So tell us about. I mean, I get the sense that she's.
Well, my daughter Love
Teague.
She's been on a couple of shows here as well. She started Children for Change back with Jesse's Homeless Outreach Project, and she annually does something with the homeless down on the green usually, and now it's just to the point where she actually has a group in New Jersey, and she's trying to start one in New York. And she's online, she's doing it on YouTube, and she's telling the kids, well, all you have to do is just go to your church or go someplace, or just go downtown, go down to your city hall and tell them that you want to be a kid that gives away hats or scarves, and then see if they have money. And if they have money, then you go to the store, and then you go, you set your date, you make your flyer. She's 11 now. She's
and the
been
name
doing
of
it
her
since
name of her business is
Children for Change.
Children for Change.
It's a nonprofit.
And she's been on other radio shows, but we won't hold that against her. We'll have. I mean, she's
bring it back.
all right. We'll have her come on to the best show very soon. You tell her I said so.
Okay.
Chauncey, jump to YouTube for a second. Should we have people subscribe? I mean, tease us a little bit about that.
I would love for people. I started it some months ago, and it's a channel. It's self-named Chauncey K. Robinson. It's called The Twisted Girl Next Door, which basically just means that I like watching horror and supernatural with a smile, like the girl next door type thing. And I focus on film and TV that has a horror supernatural kind of tinge to a dark superhero. And the reason why I do that, because one of my first forays into like film and TV has been the horror genre, but not just because it's monsters and fantasy,
and
but
because
because
you know Art and Joel. I mean, and myself, not myself. We're three horror people.
Joel doesn't like horror, actually. We were actually talking about Joel Fishman. She does not like horror. But the thing is, I always have felt that horror gives the space to be political in more ways than one.
What does that mean?
Meaning because of the fantastic, I mean, we've seen it in various, like George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, a zombie picture. Had dealt with race and it dealt with women as in leadership roles.
Oh, cut it out.
Yes.
And so now the Jason Peele thing has kind of brought that clearer.
Jordan Peele has totally done that with the Get Out, but that's not something new. And it's a funny thing. People think it's something. People think it's something new with Get Out and what he's doing and putting a Black family center stage with us. What he's really doing as a horror fan is building off on the history of horror.
So there's a lineage that he's following.
It's totally a lineage. John Carpenter. I did a podcast that was like almost an hour and a half on Dead Meat podcast, another really great horror channel, and what we did was talk about the John Carpenter movies, and one of those movies was They Live, which dealt with the premise was that the wealthy 1% were actually aliens from outer space, and that when you put on sunglasses you could see what they really were, which was to oppress you.
Cut it out.
And this was in the 1980s, and John Carpenter, who's a great director, did Halloween, Michael Myers and stuff. One of the things he said about They Live, I actually wrote an article about the anniversary of it for the People's World not too long ago, was that it was an FU to the Reagan economics, the trickle down economy, this question of, the money will trickle down if the wealthy keep it. This was a horror movie though. And I always say, I'm like, horror doesn't get its just due because there's so many horror movies that are actually so
you
political.
See it to be informative and newsworthy and thought-provoking.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and that's one of the things I explore with my YouTube channel, which is, I'll do a movie. Usually it's of that genre, but a lot of time it has themes in it in various ways. Either a woman is in leadership, or it's dealing with certain subtext and stuff. And I just think it's so fun because one of the things, I do write original fiction as well, and that's
your second, third, and fourth book.
Yeah, that's and I usually try to intertwine those kind of themes because it's so great to be able to do that. And I feel like it's more relatable to people, that you can kind of push that messaging when like even Star Wars to a certain degree is somewhat political, deals with this empire that's trying to oppress people and things of that nature, and people can be more susceptible to those messaging, and sometimes they don't even realize they're getting it because they're like, this is a great sci-fi movie, this is a great horror movie, but then they come away with thinking down with the patriarchy or something, because they got that messaging from culture, from a movie.
Yes. We're kind of winding up for the next 8 or 9 minutes, but Art, before we go, let's talk a little bit about the Communist Party here in New Haven in the state, and people want to get involved, or if they want more information. Unfortunately or fortunately, for whatever matter, depending on a person's historical kind of recollection and belief system and personal and family ideology, we're hearing more of these words: socialism. We're hearing obviously capitalism. We're even hearing communism to some degree. But I've just enjoyed personally meeting you and Joel. I remember when Joel ran for congressperson back in 1970. 73, 74 was the first time that I met her. Nothing against our congressperson at that time, but I've always been type of person I've just been open. I mean, I'm apolitical. I like people, and whatever the expressions of our humanity kind of attracts me. But it's important for people to know that they still can get involved in a variety of ways with the Communist Party here in New Haven as well as statewide.
Yeah, well, you brought up Joelle's campaigns when she was running for Congress in the 1970s, and what she did then, we were just talking about that. She put forth the slogan, people before profits. And she helped shatter the stereotype of what a communist was, because there had been a concerted campaign for decades to vilify and distort communism and communists. But what communists then and now and always have been about is fighting for equality, for fighting against racism, for fighting for the unity of working people, because only by sticking together can we stand up to the 1%. And that's what we do in Connecticut and all over the country. And so wherever people are fighting for their rights, we aim to be part of it, to encourage it, and to build bridges and unity amongst the different segments of people's struggles.
Marcy? Closer.
What Art said is, I'm sitting here, I'm a Black female, and I started my birthday weekend on Thursday at the public hearing, and someone asked me one day, what do I do? And I said, well, it's hard for me to tell you because in a day I can do a lot. So I decided that this birthday I would put all 14 events from Thursday to this morning, except for on a piece of paper and let people know. Now, you want to know what I say I'm a communist and what I'm doing. I said, just look at all the different things that I'm doing. I said, I'm unifying people. I'm putting people together that need help with people that can help. So to me, that's what me and communism is making sure that I am there when people need me to be there. I know we mentioned that earlier. Sometimes you got to sleep too. But I'll do what I need to do.
Absolutely.
Rest. I will get my rest. But
and get reinvigorated.
I will rest well.
Yes, that's right. And Chauncey, you're a little younger than the three of us here. But you're involved as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things of, I think, as a like Marcy was saying, as a Black woman, as a young Black person, I feel like it's kind of a necessity to kind of need to be a part of an organization that wants to change the system because of the system that we live under being the way it is. That if you live under, especially as a person of color, that you see there's something inherently wrong. And what we're seeing with like Alexandria Cortez and others is that, people are putting forth an idea of challenging the status quo, especially for the millennial generation. We're the first generation that will be less off than our previous generation, right? And so we're questioning, why is that? What is going on with this system? And I think so. This organization, which has a long history of doing so many, the deeds are there of doing so many things, of fighting for true democracy, is very appealing for our generation. It's very appealing to want to get involved in something that doesn't push the status quo. And so that's one of the reasons why, just the long history of it with Angela Davis and others, it's really important.
That's key. And that's another reason you're going to call in a few months from sunny California. And how did you get from the Northeast to the West Coast? Have folks that tune in, and we're all trying to decide about this mystery of life. But sometimes you just go on gut instincts, or just you have a sense of where you should be or what you should do, and sometimes you realize that you might be in the wrong place and you're not sure where you want to go, but you got to leave that place. That transition from Newark to San Fran kind of intrigues me.
Yeah, I had just never been out of Jersey for most of my life until I graduated, and I was in Temple University for just all of a week, and I just was kind of tired of the school system, just kind of that restriction of the school system. So I wanted something different. I think the World Youth Festival was happening in Venezuela, and I got involved with a group and ended up over there for a bit. And that was just really cool, kind of exploring. That was my first time ever on a plane.
How old were you roughly? 18, 19?
Yeah, 18.
So again, so the World Festival I had with Ashley Joel and one or two of the students, because the World Festival I think was most recently held somewhere in Russia.
Yeah, it was Russia.
So I had students. So just to have that opportunity at that formative, that you're seeking for ideas.
Yeah,
and
there was like over 30,000 or so youth from all over the world, and it was just such a cool, and especially for me because there were Afro Venezuelans there who wanted to know about like Obama and other people and things and what we were going through as Black Americans. And so that kind of opened me up to something bigger. And then I got back to the States, ended up kind of doing some volunteer work and stuff in California. And then I decided I wanted to go back to school. So I went to San Francisco State, which is my college, and I ended up staying there for a bit. And
well,
then,
I mean, San Francisco, just hold that, hit the pause button. I mean, San Francisco State, if you look at Black studies, it has a kind of a very important role in our struggle. So was it kind of just a happenstance, or were you aware of their kind of historical presence?
Yeah, I mean, I knew San Francisco as a place that was very progressive and left leaning and things of that nature. So I ended up there, and yeah, when I got there, just kind of the classes and things, and just a lot of my mentors who were teachers there, and just some of the work they had done, not just in politics, but also culture and connecting that and stuff, was really inspiring to me to want to fuse the two. And yeah, and it was just a really great 4 to 5 years that I was there. And then I got offered a position at People's World to kind of do their social media, just simple social media. And then that kind of grew. And it's given me these opportunities to just kind of grow in my craft of telling stories and film and TV criticism and stuff that, PW has allowed me to do, along with, getting the news out to people.
Tremendous. Peoplesworld.org. We have about 2 minutes, and I got to squeeze in, although it seems we're not going to do justice to it, but Black Geeks.
Oh, yes.
Black Geeks.
Blurs, as they like. Black nerds.
Is that Black? So talk to me about that, because I think it's just it's mislabeled. I mean, it's intellectual fervor. It's exploring the unknown.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's not like just for some people. We all should need to be black. It's black intelligentsia.
Yeah.
But I don't want to put words in your mouth.
It's just one of those things where kind of that distinction, because sometimes in spaces like that they can feel like they're like predominantly white, or that Black people can't be associated with that. So there's a community out there that I've found through various social media things of people really trying, as Black people trying to, or putting their stance on things, looking at certain types of topics, culture, pop culture, all of that, and putting a perspective on there that is from the Black perspective. That's one of the things I do as a film and TV critic, like with Rotten Tomatoes. Like, one of the ways I got it was because they were doing an incentive to have more women and people of color reviewers, because the people who were deciding what's art and what's good were predominantly white, but yet you have this influx of course, people of color making art. So shouldn't people of color be able to give a distinction on that, have the jobs and things to talk about it? So, that's part of it. That's part of the aspect of saying we can exist here too. We exist everywhere, but sometimes we don't get that attention that we deserve.
Indeed. For the three of you, we're going to just give last words, but just before we do, Chauncey, you did the review, because I'm a Netflix addict, but I mean, Netflix is so broad in terms of its menu that it's easy to become addicted to one or two channels or one or two programs. But Lionheart, you did a review, I believe, on Lionheart, the Nigerian film. Yeah,
no, that was a really poignant film, I think, because of the fact that, I mean, it was a comedy, it was a simple film, but the thing was, it was Nollywood, which is Nigerian Hollywood, is actually really large, right? But they, with the infrastructure and things of that nature, are trying to get it to a global audience and what that means. And Netflix actually made history in putting this film, Lionheart, on Netflix and getting it such wide exposure.
Yes.
And it was really cool film, because it's not, because sometimes when you see films about the country, in countries of Africa and things of that nature, that it can, they're usually kind of for the white sensibilities, mainstream, like pain, horror and stuff. And this was a film showing people in complex situations and a comedy. And it was a leading woman as the film, she was the director and also the lead actress. And it was just so great for representation. And yeah, I recommend it.
Definitely. I've seen it twice. And the lead lady and her father, but then the brother, the uncle, I just loved.
It was just such, and it was a different kind of take on those type of archetype of characters too.
Yeah,
that you don't always get to see.
Okay, last word. Art, will go with you.
It's been great having Chauncey here, and I'm supposed to give some profound political statement, but really, I'm going to download and watch Lionheart. You've given me so many good ideas about stuff to see.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yes. Marcy?
I can't thank Chauncey enough for being here, number one, and just for being inspiration to my children.
Indeed.
Yeah, definitely.
That's so important.
Yeah, and it's been a great time here in Connecticut. When I got off the my airplane, there was a thing that said Connecticut Revolutionary. That's the slogan here. And so I wasn't too sure. I didn't know. And after this weekend, I'm like, yeah, that definitely applies. So it's been a great time.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for listening. And we'll see you next week. And Harry, thank you as always. And I always like to give a shout out to Paul Bass for the New Haven Independent and WNHH, because we don't have Pacifica Radio as much anymore, and our local radio is kind of diminishing. But we have something here in New Haven that's really a prized jewel in my mind. So let's take advantage of it, support the other hosts and guests, and support the New Haven Independent, and support the Communist Party, support your church, support somebody, and be involved. Take care, everyone.
I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.